Welcome in. My name's Jason Priester, Clemson Insider. Hope everyone is enjoying their Monday as much as I am. Man, it is portal season. And if you're a Clemson fan, this is what you've seen the past couple of days, 3-4 days since the portal opened on Friday. You're not accustomed to seeing. Clemson's never been this active in the portal before. They've had a small number of targets last year. They tried to land an offensive lineman or two the year before, didn't come away with any, but it's always kind of been a small number. Not the case this year, man. They are totally trying to retool that defense, particularly on the back end. We've already seen a bunch of names of safeties that are going to come through here in the next, some's already been on campus. Don't get me wrong, but in the next few days, there'll be many more. Some we'll find out about, some we might not find out about. Portal recruiting is a little bit different. Some people don't like that stuff out there. Some people don't care. Might just depend on the school and the player. Oftentimes it's hard to get any information out of those guys, especially if you don't have a relationship with the agents and stuff that they're dealing with, and they certainly show their favoritism toward the national guys. But I think we've done a pretty good job of getting some names ironed down. A lot of guys going to be coming through in the next few days, probably throughout the entire window. Doesn't close to the 16th. Clemson's got about, by my count, I think we're at 19 spots that are open. That's counting the first portal commitment of this cycle that you got today with the DB from Penn State. And he's a pretty good pickup in his own regard. Matter of fact, in my opinion, he's a big time get for Clemson. Probably couldn't have started it off any better. Elliott Washington. He can play corner for you. He can play nickel for you, and that's the kind of versatility Clemson needs on the back end of that defense, especially after losing both your starters and Khalil Barnes and Ricardo Jones, which I think Jones probably caught some folks by surprise. I doubt Barnes really caught anybody by surprise with the way the season played out and just some of the stuff that went on with him and his family online with some of the heat he took. So, I doubt that one caught many people off guard, but he's already committed to Georgia. So somebody thinks he's got something left in the tank. Before we get started, I want to thank my fellas over at A-Glass, man, longtime sponsors of this show. As of the end of the year, we are looking for new sponsorship. Our deal expired at the end of the year, so we are in the market for new sponsorship. If you got any interest in that, let me know. You can shoot me an email. Matter of fact, I'll put it on here at the bottom of the screen. You can reach out to me on Twitter, Facebook, whatever. If you got my phone number, text me. Most of you probably don't have that, but I'm sure a few of you do. There's a bunch of different ways you can get in touch with me. But by the time this thing's said and done with, I would expect Clemson to have probably taken in the neighborhood of 15 guys. They might not fill every single hole they've gotten, but I think you're going to get well over a dozen, with most of them coming on the defensive side of the ball. Matter of fact, when it comes to the offense, we've not seen anything but offensive linemen so far. No receivers, no running backs, and no quarterback. I have been pretty adamant that I was of the belief Clemson's quarterback for next year not currently on the roster. And I always said that I had a reason for saying that. Well, the reason being is because I had been told on more than one occasion that there was a large number of people inside that building over there that were of the opinion that Clemson needed to go get a quarterback. Haven't heard anything about new OC Chad Morris's opinions on that subject, but this was before, right before Riley was fired. Was the last time I kind of talked about it with somebody. Told the same thing. That the growing consensus is, and I'm not saying it was an overwhelming majority or anything. I'm just saying there was a growing number of people in that building that was of the opinion that they needed to go get a quarterback. Sounds like Dabo Swinney's going to not listen to those opinions and go with his own instinct, his own gut, and ride with what he's got on the roster. With Chad Morris being hired, I would keep one eye out on Chandler Morris and whether he gets an extra year of eligibility, but that you might not find that out for months, might not even happen. There's just no way to know how that's going to play out at this point. But there's no way Chad Morris takes this job if he is not fully on board with the plan, for quarterback in 26. Spent a lot of time talking about Morris last week too. It was, matter of fact, it was like, almost right time we ended this show. I got a phone call telling me that Morris was actually a legitimate candidate. I couldn't believe it. I'm still not a big fan of it. I was talked off the ledge a little bit. But just kind of feels like, trying to rekindle some magic from the past. And, I just don't know how this thing's going to play out. But I'll go into it with an open mind, and I'll be the first to admit I thought Garrett Riley was a good hire. That didn't work out at all. There were a lot of people that thought Garrett Riley was a good hire. Seems to be that the fan base is kind of split right down the middle. This Chad Morris thing, you either hate it or you love it. I'm not on the extreme side of hating it, but I'm not a big fan of, dipping into the well and going back to the past for a guy that's not called plays in 5 years. Morris always liked to run that run 100 plays a game. And I don't even know how that works anymore with defense getting they get the opportunity to substitute and stuff. I just don't know. There's a lot of questions, and rightfully so. But it feels like, again, one of those things where Dabo's talking about, I've got away from listening to my own instincts, and I'm going to go back to doing that more. Just kind of feels like one of those things. He and Morris are very familiar with each other. They know they can work well together. He knows Morris is going to have or take command of, not only the quarterback room, but the entire offense. He's not one of those laid back dudes like Garrett Riley. He's more of an in your face type of guy. He commands respect. I think that might be something that's been missing in that room, and I think Dabo trusts him as a play caller. But we'll see how it works out. There's a lot of different directions we can go in this thing, man. There's no way I'm gonna get to every question. I'll do my best to get to as many as I can. If I don't take yours, if it's already been asked, I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about the same things over and over. If you missed the first part or missed part of it, you can go back and watch it later. All that I'm trying to say, I can't go 2 hours a night. I'm almost ready to go back to Clemson not being players in the portal, man. I have not been as busy as I've been the past 4 days. I've never been that busy covering Clemson in 5-6 years I've been doing it. It has been a grind the past few days. With that said, let's get into it. DJ Lagway makes a lot of sense since he is familiar with Dabo and Clemson, and we desperately need a mature dual threat QB next year, or we run the high probability of a repeat of this year. Look, I am. You don't have to make the argument to me that Clemson needs a quarterback, because I think they do. Anybody old enough to remember those Chad Morris's offense? Somebody's making a delivery to my house. Anybody old enough to remember those Chad Morris offenses? And when you look at Chris Vizina, does he seem like the optimal fit? He doesn't to me. No, but Taj Boyd worked in that thing. Who knows, man? It's not like he was the most fleet of foot either, but they turned him into a battering ram. He ended up being a pretty good running quarterback, a pretty good dual threat guy. But if you're gonna take a quarterback, to me, it's not a DJ Lagway. You say right here we need a mature dual threat QB. I don't know that I see DJ Lagway being that mature. I know you didn't use the word veteran here, but mature veteran guy. Because if you're going to take a quarterback, to me, that's what you need. Somebody that's been there, done that, and I don't see Lagway in that regard yet. The guy threw about as many interceptions as touchdowns this year. I'd much rather have a guy that's started a couple years and had some success, even if you wanted to look at a guy like the Michigan State guy. Somebody just using him as an example because I saw a lot of people trying to link him to Clemson, and I can tell you as of last night, he had not heard a peep from Clemson. But it doesn't look like they're going that route regardless. So I lost $20 betting a friend. We were getting a quarterback in the portal, JP. It looks 100%. I wouldn't pay up until, I wouldn't pay up quite yet, but I'd go ahead and go to the ATM and get that money because you're probably going to owe it. TJ is back. Him, Wesco Brown, Betancourt, and the freshman Naheem, and get in the backfield. Let's go. Yeah, you got plenty of weapons. No doubt about that. Fingers crossed that Bryant Wesco gets back and has nothing lingering with that injury. I'm just not sold on Chris Vizina, man. I'm just not. I heard so many good things about him back there in the spring, back there in the fall, and then the further you get in the season, that the message kind of starts to change in what you hear, and it's not that. I don't want to say that I keep hearing that people in that building don't believe in him, don't think he can play. It's more the fact that they don't know. They just haven't seen it, and they'd rather go get something that they know. They've seen it. There's a lot of unknowns at the most important position on the field, and as big as an offseason as this is for Clemson and Dabo and and bringing back Chad Morris, I don't know, man. To me, I don't know. The logical thing just seems you got to go get a quarterback, man. Even if that means you take a chance on running Vizina off. Look here, man. We might all ended up getting proven wrong. Maybe they know exactly what they're doing, and Vizina's that guy, or they think Chad can turn Denson into something in one spring and fall camp. Look, one thing that guy can do is develop quarterbacks, and Denson would kind of seem to be the prototypical Chad Morris quarterback in my eyes anyways. But either way, we'll see what happens. Is Clemson really working on a week 0 game before the LSU? I've heard some whispers of that. Yeah, I've heard both of them. But I mean that don't. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but I mean I've heard some whispers that might end up actually happen, being the second game of the season instead of the first. Are they seriously not going to bring in Any DNs? Yes, they're going to bring in DNs at least one. Absolutely. There's already one that's on there that can play defensive end that's visiting. There's so many I can't remember their names. I got a list of them up on the message board at the site. But yeah, there's one guy already scheduled to visit that can play in. See if I can scroll this thing here right quick and remember what his name is because there's so freaking many of them. The defensive tackle, one of the D2 defensive tackles is there right now. I might don't hold me to this. I might be thinking of the Jenkins kid from Florida State that's capable of playing defensive end, but I can't recall off the top of my head. But yeah, to answer your question, yeah, they want to take a defensive end. No Porter QB and Boyd and Turner to position coach. From my understanding, Morris is going to be the quarterback's coach. Now, Boyd might take on a larger role working with the quarterbacks because, as it is, he does not have the role that most people in this chat over here has assumed that he has. And from my understanding, Turner's going to get an expanded role too. I don't know what that means quite yet. I don't know if he'll be coaching the safeties or the nickels. I'm guessing it'll probably be the safeties, and Hawkins will coach the nickels. Mike Reed still with the corners, with Thomas Allen kind of overseeing that room the way they set it up at the end of the year. Seems Dabo is putting his job on the line for a QB who's played one game against an awful defense. Yeah, it does seem that we just all assume that the plan is to have Vizina be the guy, and it might very well end up being that way. But man, we hadn't even started spring practice yet. Some of those other dudes might have a little something to say about that. So, but yeah, he's bullish on the ones on campus apparently. Modern defenses kill screens and flats. How will Morris adjust his play call? I think that's a good question. We haven't seen him run an offense in 5 years. Those SMU offenses when he was a head coach there were pretty good. He inherited a Arkansas team that was built to work out of the eye. Had a bunch of players on that roster that didn't really fit what he wanted to do, and didn't even get 2 years to overhaul the roster. But I think that's a fair question. How will his scheme evolve to kind of fit today's game, because it's changed so much, since 2018, 2019, 2020, which is the last time he was an offensive coordinator at Auburn. And that offense didn't hit on much that year. Yeah, it's like I said earlier, man. I'm not a big fan of this. I know most people in here think I like to pump sunshine all the time, and I really just try to call it like I see it, and try to put some logical thought and be fair about things, man. But I'm not a big fan of this. There's no way you can look somebody in the eye and say, "Hey, he was the best that we could get." Now, who knows? That money might have played a factor. Clemson's on the hook for Garrett Riley's buyout right now, the full thing. as we stand here today. But speaking of Garrett Riley, I do want to throw this out there. We took a lot of heat a few weeks ago when we said he wasn't coming back. We knew then he wasn't coming back. And turns out he wasn't coming back. But anyways, I don't know if financial considerations played a part. He's only going to make up to 1.2, and a lot of that's going to be based on performance. That's basically the same thing Matt Luke's going to make this year. It's a big, bold move, though. One thing you can't say about Dabo Swinney is that he does not have let's just say guts. Just keep this thing PG tonight. TJ and Wesco accepted deals, knowing nothing would be added to the quarterback room. I've never really heard anything about the possibility of Wesco leaving. I know it's been talked about online a lot, but behind the scenes, me personally, I've never really heard anything about it. I'm just assuming with that type of injury and the unknown, I don't know that he had a bunch of suitors offering him big time money. I mean, I'm not saying they weren't. I'm just saying I don't know. But it cost to get TJ back. Texas A&M was one of the schools. LSU was one of the schools that was, kind of pushing to get him. And if you beat out LSU for somebody, that's pretty proof positive that you paid to get that guy. It's kind of the same thing with Will Helt last year. You didn't probably, matter of fact, I know they didn't offer the highest deal, but they got it in the ballpark. But it does appear that, yeah, they know they're coming back to what's already in the quarterback room. Brandon, no, he's not coming on tonight. But I can go ahead and tell you, he loves the idea of Chad Morris coming back. He played for Chad. I've talked to him. He loves it. Why did Green leave? Green came pretty close to leaving last year. There were some teams that stepped up and offered him, some legit money to leave, and he stuck around. And if you look at the schools that he's visiting, that'll give you a pretty good idea of why he left. I know LSU's one. I think Texas A&M's one. Hold on a minute. I can tell you all of them. Let's see here. LSU, A&M, Southern Cal, Miami. 4 of the biggest spenders in the country. I'm sure he had a number in mind of what he thought he was worth, and Clemson might have told him, "Hey, you're gonna have to see if you can find out elsewhere." Visit counts still seem to be below the gap counts. Not every visitor will become a Tiger. Could a number of offers and acceptances come without visits? Yeah, I don't know, but I would say this: I wouldn't bank on finding out about every visit. We'll find out about some. There'll be some we probably don't find out about. As far as and I would say this too: if you get a guy on campus, you can just go ahead and assume he's a take, whether they announce an offer or not. You get him on campus, just go ahead and assume he's a take. But as far as taking a guy without ever visiting, I don't know. It's a possibility in this era. So no offensive guys on deck. Clemson's going to look to try and add at least one offensive lineman. There was, I think, one of those guys was supposed to be there today. I think he was one of the offensive tackle was one of the guys that was supposed to be in there today. The one from Georgia Southern. So I don't know that you need to add at receiver. I don't know that you need to add at tight end. You already had one leave because he's third on the depth chart and not passing Olsen, Pat Henry, or Christian Betancourt. You can make the argument that they could benefit from having a veteran back to kind of pair with Gideon Davidson, but I think you got 5 running backs on scholarship as is. Barnes showed a picture of him as a kid in a dog T-shirt. Maybe he wanted to be there all along. If Georgia was an option, that's might very well be where he ended up coming out of high school. He went to a lot of games. Matter of fact, I don't remember if he was born not far outside of Athens or he moved there when he was young, but he spent a lot of his childhood there close to Athens. Went to a lot of games in Athens. I think his grandmother worked there at the stadium. So, yeah, there was definitely an emotional pull there. Definitely believe some players were recommended to go into portal. Some of the lower level guys, yeah, but anybody that thinks Khalil Barnes left because Clemson nudged him in that direction, nope. Same thing with Ricardo Jones. They wanted to keep both those guys. They tried to keep both those guys. They would have preferred to keep Stephon Green. I can't think. Am I missing somebody that was right at the top of the depth chart or at the top of the depth chart? Those top level guys, they wanted to keep. How do I feel about the kid from Southern Cal? I think he'd be a perfect fit if that's what you're asking me. He didn't play a lot outside of special teams during his freshman year at Southern Cal, but there's some clips he posted online from practice on Twitter, and that's kind of the kind of player Clemson's lacking on that side of the ball, man, in some spots. So how can some guys that just have that dog in them, and he kind of seems like he's got it. Now, if you're asking me what are Clemson's chances, probably better than fair. The guy doesn't fly all the way out here from California on a whim. There's just so many of these guys. I can't keep all the details of each one of them. I can't remember all of them right off the top of my head. I know he's one of the guys that that I haven't been able to get in touch with. Can't remember if he had any other visits set up yet. I have not seen my whitetail friends today. Matter of fact, I never see them. It's my kid or my future son-in-law or somebody else that always sees them back there, and they take a picture to come in and show me because they're never out there when I go out there, and I have yet to see them. It's out. I think the first time I saw them was the last time I saw them. I saw two out there one night, and I haven't seen them since. But everybody else sees them. I don't think we need wide receivers. Definitely a QB, and could probably use a runner. I don't think you need any wide receivers either. Even if you don't get Tristan Smith back, if you get him back, great. If you don't, I don't think you have to fill that spot. Can we borrow $5 million for? Would it make a difference? You know, Clemson's going to have around the same amount of money to spend on the roster this year that they did last year. I mean, they spent around $3 million on Cade. I mean, it's not like they're lacking in the funds. That's the money. I don't think the money is why they're not doing it. Say he's going to be back, and is he healthy? He was not healthy to end the season. I mean, it's been over a year since he tore that ACL. I would assume he'll get back at some point, but man, they were expecting him back early in the year, and he had a couple of setbacks, hurt his quad. So, I mean, we'll see what happens. No, we have not talked to Chad Marsh yet, and I'll say it one more time, even though I said earlier I'm not going to repeat myself. But I'm not a big fan of this. I feel like it's, I don't know. On the surface, it kind of feels, it feels like you're trying to dip into the past to create some old magic that I don't notice there anymore. All of the magic might have been squeezed out of that thing back then. Hiring a guy that hasn't called plays in 5 years does not give me the warm and fuzzies. Hiring a guy who probably wasn't going to have an offensive coordinator job at the Power 4 level outside of Clemson doesn't give me the warm and fuzzies. But at the same time, I like the Garrett Riley hire. And we all saw how that turned out. So I might be just as wrong about this as I was about that. And I'm certainly willing to go into it with an open mind. And one thing's for sure, the spring should be fun. And we have not talked to him yet. There's been no press conference or anything like that. $3.6 million reasons to take the job. Yeah, I don't think that money's guaranteed though. I think it's very, if I'm remembering right, it's very incentive laden, and the base salaries. Let's see if I can get it up here. Yeah, he can make like 720,000 in bonuses. Should Clemson make the college football playoff, makes the ACC championship game, or win the ACC, 8 or more wins gets him another bonus. There's a lot of incentives in there that if you don't hit those goals, that salary is not nearly 1.2 per year, which I kind of like. Make them have to earn it. Three, 4 years ago, you told me, or at least hinted, that Chad Morris would never be back. I felt like you implied there was tension. Nah, I don't think he left. I never said he left on bad terms. The fact that he was back and helping out 2 years ago tells you it was not on bad terms. I always said he wouldn't be back because I'm not a big. How often do you see an offensive coordinator that has left to take a head coaching job return to that same school 7, 8, 9, this case 15 years later almost to take the same job? It just doesn't happen. So that's why I always said I never thought he'd be back. And then, I mean, it's at one point he actually had to go back to coaching high school for a year. So I mean, instead of Chad, he should have went and gotten beat. Dude, there was zero possibility of that happening. There's no way. His offense poured the foundation for Clemson's national title run. Nobody's saying it didn't. It absolutely did. And they continued to run it even after he left. But by about 2019, 2020, there was a lot of complaining about how stale Clemson's offense had gotten. By 2021, that chatter had really amped up in 2022 too. It'll be interesting to see how much he has to adjust, because I don't think you can just bring back the same scheme, because I don't think it'll work the way it did back then. It was kind of gimmicky. It was designed to run 100 plays. Clemson didn't have much on defense back then. You kind of try to wear the opposing defense out. If you're Clemson, you shouldn't have to rely on that anymore, because doing that you also risk wearing your own defense out. We saw it happen plenty of times back then, but I am kind of curious to see, how it's different, what it looks like, because I'm sure he's done a lot of evolving over the past few years. He's been around at a bunch of different schools, been around a bunch of different coaches with a lot of different ideas. I'm sure he's exchanged ideas with a ton of coaches. It's like I said a minute ago, it should at least be fun in the spring. Mars feels like a 90-10 split against by the fans that are following the program closely. It's been more like 60-40, 50. It's to me, what I've seen, I'm not saying that's not what you've seen. What I've seen, it's probably been closer to 60-40, 50-50, 50-50. Safe hire if it works, disaster if it does not. It's absolutely a safe hire, man. Either way. I mean, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but it's the safe hire. You don't have to worry about getting to know somebody else and wondering whether you're going to get along, because I think by the end, I don't think Dabo's working relationship with Garrett Riley was all that solid. Um, and I can see why. I mean, how many times did he throw Garrett under the bus this year? And I'm not saying he didn't deserve to be thrown under the bus. Some of those times he did. But no coach wants to be thrown under the bus, out in public, regardless of whether they deserve it or not. Particularly when it's Dabo's the one doing it, because he's been so reluctant to do it to others in the past. But hiring Chad's definitely, the safe route here. He knows exactly what he's getting. He knows exactly how they're going to work together. He knows exactly what kind of command Morris is going to have over the entire offense. And I'm not necessarily talking about from a play calling standpoint, but in the meeting rooms. He knows exactly what to expect out of him as a play caller. Hopefully this will put an end to all the Dabo meddling in the offense crap, because Chad Morris didn't stand for that back then, and I'm pretty sure he won't stand for it now. It'll be all Morris, but it's interesting. It's got me intrigued. I'm not a big fan of it, but I'm intrigued. Yeah, most of the money's tied to incentives. You got to hit certain benchmarks to get it. I want to say the base salary was 300 and something thousand. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. I've been so busy tracking portal guys today, I didn't really pay much attention to that. I do think Chad could potentially unlock the weapons we have and are bringing in. Feel it could have greatly benefited Cade. He always operated better in hurry up. But could see the retread theory too. See, I don't think you can run the hurry up the way Morris's offense used to, in the way they used to operate, man. The rules have kind of changed. Defenses are allowed to substitute now, unless you just don't want to ever substitute. I mean, that's about the only way to do it these days, but we shall see. How do you feel about Dennis Love at strength and conditioning? I'm a big fan of that hire. There was somebody in here last week that was not a big fan of it, that thinks he's just a Batson clone because he's worked under Batson the past couple years. But that guy, man, the Minnesota Vikings wanted him to come be their head strength and conditioning coach. They don't just hand those things out to scrubs. They don't offer those jobs to guys who don't know what they're doing and whose track record's not proven. He's been around a little bit. He was at Clemson a long time ago, and he left, and he's been around, and he's learned under different guys, man. And now that he's come back, and I think it'll be a little different. I think Batson was a pretty good strength guy, man, and I do think his health issues probably impacted him as a coach, at least to a certain degree. I don't know how they wouldn't have. I don't know anybody in those same circumstances. I don't know how those health issues wouldn't have at least hindered you a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I like it. I don't care that he spent a couple years under Batson here the past 2-3 seasons, whatever it was. I don't care that he worked under Batson a decade ago or whatever it was before he left the first time. I'm more worried about what he did between those two stops and who he learned from while he was gone. And the biggest thing to me is the NFL team wanting to hire him, not to just be assistant, but to run the thing. I mean, to me, that speaks volumes. Maybe the Chad can tailor his offense to the personnel and make it work. Yeah, he did such a good job of that in 14 when he had Cole Stout as the quarterback when Deshaun Watson was hurt. See, that was one of my there were two things to me with Morrison back with Chad Morris back then. I used to think he'd get away from the run too quickly sometimes. There was one game against South Carolina. Oh, man. I can't remember the year it was, but Roderick McDowell had like 15 carries for 95 yards in the first half. And I think it was a 7-point game at halftime. And they gave him the ball 5 times in the second half. It just felt like every time they had Taj Boyd drop back to pass, they were trying to score 14 points. Clemson had the better team that year. It felt like they weren't going to be satisfied with winning. They had to blow them out. It was during that 5-game losing streak, and Clemson ended up losing by a couple of scores. Again, they just totally abandoned the run in the second half. And then the second thing is, I thought sometimes he tried to fit square pegs into round holes, and I thought he did that with Cole Stout a little bit. But I'm sure that's been over 10 years ago. Coaches learn, they grow, they evolve, and I'm sure he has. I can get on board with this here. I'm willing to. I'll readily admit it might very well be an upgrade over what you've had the past 3 years. Because one thing Morris's offense will have, it will have an identity. Clemson's offense has not had an identity since Garrett Riley's been there. He came in talking about it, that this being a type of dirt raid offense with some air raid tendencies. Well, that never materialized. It kind of became an offense that was hard to watch, that made everything hard. Nothing ever looked easy. Nothing ever looked smooth. Abandoned the run or got away from the run more often than not, and got very, very screen heavy at times. And it could be 3rd and 6, and you're going to have a receiver run 4-yard or a 4-yard route. And those are the kind of things I'm going to remember this offense for, or that offense for. I thought that's honestly what he was talking about, looking back on his instincts comment. I don't know that those had anything to do with Chad Morris or not. I'm sure it had something to do with the offensive coordinator. I don't know if it had anything to do with Chad Morris specifically. I wonder if he wanted to hire Morris in 23 when Riley was hired. No. If he wouldn't have gotten Riley, I feel pretty confident in saying Brandon Streeter doesn't get fired at that point. That was the only reason they fired him, because they were able to get Riley. Hold on, I got to answer this text. One second here. All right. Could have been talked off the ledge if the QB was taken. If the defense isn't littered with talent, I don't really want to hear excuses if they fall short next year. I don't think anybody wants to hear excuses either way. One thing you can't say is they aren't making the effort to retool the defense because we see that. They seem pretty content with what they've got on offense outside of maybe a spot along the offensive line or spot or two along the offensive line. But yeah, like I said earlier, you get no argument from me that they needed a quarterback. It was said that Chad Morris came back during the SMU game week this past year and helped game planning and cleaning up. What extent, if you know, transpired during that time? I can't tell you what those conversations entailed. I could just say I can say this. I know he was asked his opinions of what was wrong and what it would take to get it back right. But I don't know that they talked about the job or anything like that. The internal problems are definitely rubbing a portion of the fan base the wrong way. Chad Morris, Karika Wright, Tom Allen Jr. likely the safeties. My thoughts are, man, the fans keep moving the goalposts. Originally, the gripe was if a former Clemson player came back to coach, he needed to go off and get experience somewhere else before coming to be a coach at Clemson. Is that not exactly what Karika Hawkins has done? The guy even went and had a couple of stints in the NFL. He's been at 3 or 4 different colleges. He's been at James Madison, Delaware, where they've won at high levels. He's produced some all-conference players. And now he's coming back to be one of the coaches. He'll coach somewhere with the DBs, either safeties or nickels. What else does a guy have to do? I mean, are no former players allowed on the staff at all? I mean, I don't get it. Tom Allen Jr. has been at Clemson 1 year before that, or Thomas Allen. He's been at Clemson 1 year. No ties to Clemson outside of that. What's the problem there? I don't get it, man. I don't get it. If the defensive coordinator is happy with the staff that's in place, I have no reason to gripe about that. And you're never going to see me on here griping about low-level support staff, and they just don't have that much responsibility. They're just not that involved in the actual development of guys. I don't even have a big problem if it's Nolan Turner that's the safeties coach. Everybody wanted Khan out. He's out. And now they're not going to be happy if that's the replacement. Again, if the D coordinator's happy with it, why shouldn't everybody else be happy with it? We have a ton of playmakers and speed on offense. If Luke can get the line dialed in, Morris will have a lot to work with. Biggest question for me is the trenches. The biggest question for me is the defensive line. There's a lot of unknowns along the offensive line too, but one thing Morris did show back in the day was he was kind of able to scheme around some deficiencies in the offensive line. So I think you at least got that going for you. I did not like the Riley hire for Clemson. I thought he lacked maturity, experience, and was exposed during the title game. I will never judge a coach based off one game, ever. Especially a game when the team was as overmatched as TCU was in that game. I think that's pretty. I think that can generally turn out to be short sighted. Yeah, I have no idea how the LSU game's going to go. Number one, I don't know that Vizina is going to be the starter. Number two, I have no idea what Clemson's going to try out there on defense. I just can't answer that question at this point. I don't even know what that LSU team's going to look like at this point because they're going to hit the portal pretty hard too. Would you be excited if Chandler Morris? I don't care one way or the other. I it doesn't matter to me. I think he'd be an upgrade over what you've got on campus right now. But I also know you can't bank on that. The guy doesn't. He's out of eligibility. He has, filed a waiver, trying to get what would be his 7th year. I don't even know that there's a guarantee he'd leave Virginia to come to Clemson. You just have to wait and see how that plays out. It might be months before he even gets a decision. I'll use Faison, the running back at South Carolina, as an example. He was doing the same thing last year. He didn't find out until a week before the first game that he was going to get that year and be eligible. You just can't bank on that happening. You got to go forward as if you're not taking a guy that's in the portal right now, and Chandler Morris is not in the portal, last I checked, you got to move forward planning on to go with what you got. If you heard of any players that threatened to leave if we did not get a portal QB, I have not. I have heard of players threatened to leave if Riley came back, but not that if I have not heard that about a quarterback. I think Dabo is focused on the long play to keep the QB room intact for 27 and beyond. Don't think he will have that much runway if 26 goes bad. I don't think so, man, because you could go get a 1-year guy that wouldn't really have any impact on the QB room in 27. If you go get a guy that's just got 1 year of eligibility left, that's kind of the way I see it anyways. If you go get a quarterback that's got 2-3 years left, then yeah, you got to start worrying about what kind of impact it's going to have on Kareem Hughley. But if you go get a stopgap player, a graduate senior or a guy that's going into his senior year, then I don't think it impacts the 27 class in any way. I'll be honest with you, man. I'm not sure what the heck they're thinking or what the heck he's thinking. I don't want to say they because I know a lot of guys over there would have preferred to go get one out of the portal, but I just don't know, man. I go back to that day he was talked about not following his instincts and starting to listen to too many outside voices. At the time, I thought that was kind of a message because there was kind of some friction building there between Dabo and I don't know if it was boosters or administrators who were just Dabo and some of the people around the program. I just always thought that was kind of a message to them, and it might very well have been. It could have been both. But being so dead set on, or appearing to be so dead set on going to getting a quarterback, that could be him saying, "Hey, I'm gonna lean on my instincts here, despite so many people think I'm." That's my phone. I gotta hold on a minute. Sorry about that, man. That was a I could usually I'd let it ring, man, but I had to take that one. Yeah, I'll just finish up by saying I don't if you take a stopgap guy, I don't know how it impacts 27 class, man. This just kind of feels like one of those things where Dabo believes he's got the guy, even though everybody else or a majority of people, around him and in the fan base think maybe he doesn't. Sounds like Dabo decided to spend the money on defense based on the visitors. Well, defense is where most of the work needs to be done. I think you're pretty good at wide receiver. I think you're good at tight end, as long as you don't lose anybody else. I mean, that kind of goes without saying. And I could see the benefit of adding a veteran running back, but I don't know that you want to do that and risk running your guy that's supposed to be a future superstar off, or risk running him off. You could probably find a competent, or I shouldn't say competent, a suitable, number two to run out there with him that you already got. So I mean, most of the work needs to be done on defense. I've been of the opinion all along that you don't have to go spend 3.5, 4.55 million dollars on a quarterback. You could probably get one in the 2.5, $3 million range, if you wanted to go that route. But deciding you don't want to go that route, it does free up a little bit more money you can spend on that side of the ball. Any chance Dabo could be talking to someone but trying to keep it on the down low? I mean, never say never, but I certainly wouldn't bet money on it. Tate Reynolds is the guy. Well, hey, I'm a big Tate Reynolds fan. He blew me away today. He came to camp, and I watched a lot of his his sophomore film from Queen Creek. Excuse me, his junior film from Queen Creek. But he missed about the whole year. Pretty much his whole senior season was wiped out. When you've not played in a year, it's going to be hard for him to come in and win the job, in my opinion. If Fazina is the QB, why didn't they let him play in the bowl? What difference would it have made? I mean, honestly, I'm of the opinion you already. I mean, I I know that it's out there that the decision wasn't made until after the bowl game. I don't really buy into that. Um, if going in that you're not going to have the same quarterback coach, same offensive coordinator, same scheme next year, what difference does it make? Um, if I'm in Dabo's shoes, I'm letting Cade play that game if he wants to play it. That's just me. I mean, there's nothing that's going to happen in that game that's going to enhance Chris Vecina for next year. How hard were other teams coming after TJ? Hard. If Clemson lays an egg next year, is Dabo gone? That buyout would be around 45, $50 million. I'm guessing Clemson probably is not going to want to pay that. Should have picked up Josh Hoover. Clemson had no shot at getting Josh Hoover. I see Vizina as an upgrade from what Morris had with Stout, but definitely not close to Boyd. That's kind of where I'm at. But we also haven't seen a ton of Vizina. I think there's still some unknowns with him. But the limited viewings we got of him this year, he just left a lot to be desired. And I've said it many times. I just don't put a whole lot of stock into what he did against SMU, because every quarterback that played SMU lit them up this year. They got the next to the worst pass defense in the country. And it took him a quarter to even get going against them, which some of that could have been the play calling. I'm open to listening to that argument for sure. We're going to find out. It does look that way. Do you expect any more portal commitments in the next day or two? I would expect portal commitments throughout the week. Yeah. There's one guy, Donovan Starr. I think we put it out just before I went live here. Talked to him earlier today. If that name sounds familiar, he was a Clemson target in the 2025 class, cornerback. He took an official to Clemson that summer, ends up picking Auburn, spends his freshman season there. He's in the portal after they changed coaches. Talked to him earlier today, and he said he was coming into town tomorrow. I think he was supposed to be here tomorrow. So I wrote that up and put it out, and then he got back with me later today and said, hey, man, I had to reschedule. I'm coming in either late Thursday or early Friday. So that's another guy. And it's the only visit he's got scheduled. He's not set up as of tonight. He didn't have any more visits set up. That's a guy I would definitely keep an eye on. The Division II defensive lineman. I like Clemson's chances with him. I would fully expect some more movement here in the next few days throughout the week. Oh, man. Man, usually my wife's home, so I don't get hit with all these distractions. Would that give us a 13-game season? No, if you're talking about getting a game before the LSU game, no. That would just be moving one. And I don't even know for sure that's going to happen. I've just heard some whispers that it might. Yeah, I up until the other day, I've been saying who's somebody not on the roster, but I'm not saying that anymore. Outside of that, I don't have a prediction. I would have probably lean towards Vizina. I hate the stupid argument that Clemson can't get these type of portal players when Georgia can, and we're legit 40. I don't even know what legit 40 means, and I don't know what player you're talking about. I'm assuming you're talking about Hoover. He ain't going to Georgia either. Georgia's playing with a guy that's not called. They haven't gone and spent $6 million on portal quarterbacks. That is not the recipe Georgia's had in place. And I'm not familiar enough to know what Georgia has, in the money chest there. But I know Clemson's isn't what people think it is. If you're talking about 40 million here, you are way off. Man, I know people like to throw that number around. I have no idea where it came from. I had somebody message me the other night saying, man, I was just told Clemson's going to have 41 million in NIL to spend this year. Trust me, bro. Yeah. No. I've done a lot of digging on that number, man, and it ain't close to being accurate. Clemson gets their rev share money, which is, I don't know exactly what the number is going to be this year, but it was 20.5 last year. They get about 88% of that goes to football. And then the new scholar, the extra scholarships got to come out of that money. Clemson had in the neighborhood of 25 million last year, give or take. I can't tell you the exact number. It's going to be in the ballpark of the same number this year. If that's what you're talking about here with that 40, you are way off. So 40 minutes from Athens. Okay. I'm glad you weren't saying 40 million in NIL. But my original point still stands. Georgia's not going out and spending $5 million on quarterbacks. I don't even think Georgia's got a guy like Indiana does that can just stroke a check whenever they need it, or like Texas Tech does, or Oregon does, or Miami does. When is the deadline for the transfer portal guys to commit? There's a deadline for having to be in the portal. But if you want to play this year, you got, you want to go through spring practice, you got to be enrolled. So, I mean, you can't wait forever. But it's not, you don't have, like, the portal closes on the 16th. You don't have to be committed by the 16th. Do I think there's a chance Alexander could move to DN? I had that conversation with somebody earlier today. Maybe. That's kind of what he was listed as coming out of high school, a defensive end. He'd be kind of a tweener for a defensive end, man. But I think he could probably get after the passer. He might suffer a little bit in run coverage, especially if you use him as a pass rushing specialist. You might have something there. Seems like the transfers of Green and Jones likely to be missed the most. I think both of those are big losses. Big losses. Jones, make no mistake, man, he had not honed his coverage skills yet. But man, he was a ball hawk, and he wasn't afraid of contact. But that's not to say Clemson can't be better. going in, Clemson can't be better at safety going into next year than they were coming out of this season. I like the addition of the DB from Penn State. Yeah, I do too. You know, he's played for Tom Allen for a season there in 24. He's got some versatility to him. He's got some length to him, and he can fly. He's a track star. I think I read he runs like a 4.340. You know, speed's something Clemson lacked on the back end in spots. And I think he can play nickel or corner. Does the defense not like Tom Allen? Is this the reason for so much turnover on defense? I don't think it has anything to do with why you're seeing turnover on defense. I think Green thought he could he thinks he can make some more money elsewhere. I think the same thing with Jones. I think with Khalil, it was just time for both parties to have a fresh start. The linebackers are kind of been buried on the depth chart. Same thing with Rob Billings. Who am I missing somebody? I think I got them all, but yeah, it doesn't have anything to do with not liking him. Boyd probably takes on recruiting QBs similar to Boulware with the linebackers. We'll see. I don't know. You know, they said that a year ago and it never happened. It's such a critical position. You got to make sure you get it right. So we'll see what they decide to do. Now, having said that, if you decide you want to send Taj Boyd out on the road to do the recruiting, I don't think that's a negative. I think that's one of the strengths. One of his strengths is his personality, his likability. He's got anybody that's talked to him or been around him a little bit knows he's got a huge personality. He's relatable. You know, that's kind of what you want in a recruiter. Those are some of the big qualities you need in a guy, and I think he's got all those. That could actually, serve him well. Play kind of filling that role, but we'll see how it goes. Oh, I'm looking for one that I just saw, man. Now I can't find it. Somebody asked if Chad Marsh is still relevant. I think that's a really good question, man. He's not been a coordinator since 2020. How much do these, current high school players even know who Chad Morris is? I think those are all fair questions. When was the last time Dabo had a true competition at QB? Kelly Bryant, Trevor Lawrence. Really? I know that there was, and I've talked about this before, like during Cade's freshman season, there were a couple of points in that season where they kind of wanted Cade to step up and kind of take it. And he never really did. And that's kind of why DJ stayed the quarterback through the rest of the season until the ACC championship game. But the last true off-season competition, Trevor Lawrence, Kelly Bryant. I don't know what what role he's going to serve just yet. I want to say I was told he was going to be an unpaid assistant. I'm sure he's still collecting a fat buyout from North Carolina, but I don't know what his specific role is going to be. I don't know what several of these guys' specific role is going to be yet. We'll see if Turner's coaching safeties or nickels, or Hawkins is coaching safeties or nickels, or if they restructure it differently, that they're going to kind of restructure some stuff on that defense. I don't think we have all the answers to that just yet. I'm pretty sure that speaks volumes of Dabo isn't going to go full throttle into the portal, and we all know Iptay has the money. Iptay cannot spend money on NIL, man. It's not how it works. Iptay can't fund NIL. Clemson maxes out the rev share. They spend as much as they're allowed, but you can't pull NIL money from your booster club. How do we get to performing better in the trenches? That's a good question. I don't think you'll find anybody in here that would disagree with Clemson's offensive line being underwhelming this year, man. You got 4 starters returning there. And then whoever you chose to be the guy to step in there at guard, it was going to be a guy that had played a lot of football for you, man, but they just did not perform well at all most of the season. My opinion is I don't think those offensive linemen really suited what Garrett Riley wants to do on offense. Before he got here, Clemson was a heavy zone team, a lot of zone blocking, a lot of inside zone runs and stuff. Once he got here, it was a lot. There was more pulling from the offensive linemen, running different style running plays, counters and traps. And it just looked to me like a lot of times the linemen were slow to get out and pull. You got to get fresh blood along that offensive line this year, no matter who it is, whether it's a transfer to or some of those younger guys. I'm kind of looking forward to seeing what Matt Luke's first class can do, because I think they got bigger and more athletic at the same time. So maybe they'll be a little bit more versatile in what they can do. As far as owning the line of scrimmage on the other side, it's about the Jimmies and the Joes, man. People like to say Peter Woods didn't play up to expectations this year and he wasn't what people thought he was going to be. But, man, he ate double teams up. He ate them up. He was eating double teams all year long, sometimes triple teams. That guy, there's a reason he's going to be a first-round pick. Thing is, nobody around him took advantage of it. TJ Parker, I don't know if he just hit his ceiling or teams figured him out or he just, I don't know. I thought Will Help played well most of the year. Thought Jaheim Lawson played well most of the year. But I don't think outside of Woods in that one defensive end spot, you got a whole lot from the rest of the defensive line. Green was hurt some, particularly over the back half of the season, which I think impacted his play. For whatever reason, Capehart just wasn't what we thought he was going to be this year. So I think on that side, it's about the Jimmies and the Joes. Whatever you take in this portal class, you better get it right. Because, when you lose to Phylon Green, you're losing a guy who was probably going to be a starter next year beside Amari Adams. And I don't know about you, but watching that bowl game and watching Evan Brown-Schuler and Champ Thompson, I mean, they got pushed around a little bit, particularly in the second half. It's got to get better players. The veteran QB backup. Without a veteran backup QB, they are one injury away from playing pyramid or a really unpolished freshman. Heck, they don't have any. They don't really have any experience at quarterback right now. They're going to play an inexperienced, unpolished guy regardless. But no, I take your point. Yeah, let's just say it's Vizina, and he goes out there and gets hurt game one. Then what? You're in a bad spot. Because by that point, you got what you got. How much did Chad's proven track record of developing quarterbacks factor into his return? I do think it played a part. Again, it goes back to that familiarity. You know what you're going to get with him. You know what he's going to do with your quarterbacks. You've seen it. So, yeah, I mean, I do think that played a part. I don't want to hear any money excuses this year related to roster building. You don't want to hear them. They're facts. I mean, there are other teams out there that have $35, $40 million to pour into a roster, and you're basically playing with 30% less. It's a factor. Whether you want to admit it or not, it's a factor. Is tampering still illegal? 100%. Problem is there's nobody enforcing the rules. They tried to get Tennessee a couple years ago, and it didn't work out very well for the NCAA. Clemson had 29 players not even show up for the book. That ain't true, first and foremost. If we're going to say it, let's at least say it right. Most of those guys were injured. More than half of them were due to injuries, not because of opt-outs and stuff. They were hurt. And a lot of those injured guys, I know at least a handful were there. All right, I got to be wrapping this thing up. Already going longer than what I was planning to. think Dabo or position coaches will manage playtime better this year to help with retention? Just hate to see another Keith Adams situation. I would hope the running backs are managed a little better, but I don't think there was any problem with the way Keith Adams was handled. I think he's the four-string running back, and I don't think four-string running backs play much. But yeah, I would very much like to see the rotations with running back be a little different, man. You gotta be able to build some depth, man. And Clemson just did not make a lot of effort to do that the past couple of years. Something changed after the second bye week. Either Dabo stepped in or Garrett Riley stepped in because Gideon Davis was starting to get on the field a lot more after that. Yes, there is a report out that Josh Sapp's going to visit South Carolina Friday. No, I did not see Josh Pate's takedown of Dabo. I don't watch Josh Pate. I don't listen to Josh Pate. I think you asked me last week if I watched Josh Pate's takedown of Dabo. Somebody did. Yes, I talked about Jonathan Starr earlier. He was supposed to come in tomorrow, I think it was. He reached out to me later in the day today and told me he rescheduled the visit. It's going to be late Thursday, early Friday when he gets to town, and he currently has no other visits scheduled. Then why did Stephon Green leave if they've got the money? You look at the schools that he's mentioned and are taking visits to, all of them have much deeper pockets than Clemson. I've never claimed that Clemson was on par money wise with a Miami, LSU, Texas A&M. None of those. I'm saying Clemson's got about as much money as they had last year. They're not broke. But even if you've got $30 million as opposed to 20 or 30 or 35 as opposed to 25, if a guy, let's just, for example, and I'm not saying this is what Green did. If a guy comes in demanding $2 million and you think he's only worth half of that, are you going to give in to his demands or are you going to tell him to kick rocks and go get it somewhere else? Because that's how these things work. If a guy's not willing to meet you halfway and he thinks he's worth way more than you think he's worth, at a certain point, you got to let him walk. Do I think Dabo's holding out for legislation change? I don't know that he's coming in the immediate future. I surely hope not. How D-Rad would have handled this versus Neff. I don't know that it'd have been a whole lot different, to be quite honest. Not in my opinion. A lot of this, when NIL first started, I don't think Clemson handled it well. I don't know if it's because they didn't think it was going to go as far as it did, or was Dabo being stubborn or what? I just don't think they handled it well. I don't think Dabo's messaging with how important it was going to be was handled very well. I don't think the fundraising was handled very well. It took them, it took them a little while to even get the collectives figured out. They started off with Tiger Impact and dear old Clemson, and then they shut those two down and moved it all under the 110 Society. And then I think there was some headbutting going on between the 110 and IPTAY because IPTAY didn't want to give up their, fundraising money to go to the collective. And, Clemson's got this small alumni base. They don't have these, multi-millionaires littered throughout the alumni base. There's only going to be so much money coming in every year, and why IPTAY does really well. They're one of the better funded booster clubs in the country. They didn't want that money ended up in the collective instead of ending up in IPTAY. If that makes sense. So there was some button of the heads there. And again, I don't think Dabo made it sound as important as it was. So they were behind the 8 ball from the jump. It wasn't until before last season that they really started, pimping that thing. And now the collective's fully gone away. Everything's under Clemson Ventures now. But I don't know that it would have been all that different just because Dabo is who he is. And I think IPTAY would have been run the same way regardless. I just don't know that would have made a whole bunch of difference. Matt Luke's contract's guaranteed. Yes, it's not all incentive laden like Morris's. So it is 1.2 guaranteed. Incentive pay is based off a percentage of the 360K base. Yeah, I didn't really look at it. I must have misunderstood it too. I'm telling you, I've been chasing portal crap all day. Vandervoort handled the Chad Morris stuff earlier today. There you go. His bottom line is adjusted pay. Base pay is same as Luke 1.2. There you go. Wish Chad could have spent a year learning at Georgia. Maybe we can hire Streeter. You should look into what Streeter's been doing at Georgia and how well respected he is there. I feel like Streeter was a scapegoat at Clemson. I think that's been very well covered, man. He's been here for 3 years. The guy was coming off a Broyles Award. I think that's been pretty well covered. Yes, you have missed the Chad Morris party. You're gonna have to go back and watch the first 20, 30 minutes. All right. I think I'm getting to the bottom here. Does Clemson have a running back that is explosive and can hit the hole with reckless abandon? Yeah. You got to have a hole to hit first. There weren't a whole lot of them this year, man. That offensive line did not give those backs a whole lot of room to run. If Randall gets more opportunities and better offensive line play, he's a 1,000-yard rusher this year. I'd bet money on that. And Gideon Davidson is 100% of explosive back. EZ was a track star. Dude ran a 10.9 100. I mean, that's not wide receiver speed, but that's pretty good for a running back. Nix was mediocre under a string of OCs until he got to order. I think Nix is the perfect I think he's the perfect example of how important it is to not give up on a quarterback. If he's got talent, not give up on him if it's not worked out after year one or year two. It's harder to do in this portal era, but yeah, neglecting to run too quickly does sound very familiar. Any chance Dabo leaves after the portal closes? We needed an OC in place during. You mean like quits? I mean, why would you wait until after the portal closes? If you're going to leave, leave. Announce that before the bowl game and get the whole staff in place. Wish Brandon Streeter had never became OC. He was a great recruiter. He was a good recruiter. I thought he did well with the quarterbacks, and I thought he was a scapegoat for an offense that had gotten stale and an offense that was handcuffed by a bad quarterback. Do you trust Dabo to properly evaluate players in the transfer portal? Dabo's not the one sitting there watching the film all day long. He's not the one doing all the evaluating. That would be Kevin Kelly, who's been a long time NFL talent evaluator. Yeah, I trust him. Miami is not 0-5 versus Clemson the last 10 seasons. I remember Clemson getting beaten Miami. It was 2-3 seasons ago. Back during the season, they started 4-4. They lost to North Carolina State and Miami in back-to-back weeks. Do you think we start to see a real Matt Luke offensive line? They were worse than Austin. Yeah, I don't know about being worse than Austin's, man. I don't know if I agree with that, but I also know that, he doesn't have his players playing yet. Dabo used his instincts to hire Goodwin, Spiller, Grisham, and Austin. Are you sure about that, or is that maybe an example he was given of somebody, him, listening to somebody else? You don't know that. I don't know that. I think Tyler Grisham's turned out to be a hell of a wide receivers coach. Half this fan base will never admit they were wrong about that guy. I don't know who Dabo listened to when making those hires. Do you need a more experienced GM and AD? I think Graham Neff's done a pretty superb job since taking over. I think he's probably one of the brightest young ADs in the country. As far as the GM, man, I think Clemson's kind of finally starting to get that thing set up the way it needs to be, and I think Sorrells, I think he done a fantastic job last year. We'll see what happens this year, but he's got some help in there now with Kevin Kelly doing the evaluating and stuff. So, I don't think GM and AD is Clemson's problems. Give us the pros of Spiller. I think the running backs have actually gotten a lot better. My only gripe with Spiller is the rotations, to be quite honest. That's it. I thought he did a hell of a job of turning Adam Randall into the running back this year. I thought Phil Maffa was a much better back last year than he was the year prior. My only gripe with Spiller is the rotations. Is Allen going to call more games from the press box like he did? He came down from the press box like game 4 and never went back up. So any truth that Dabo had to hire Mars because CU said they are not willing to pony up another big hire? It might have played a little bit of a factor, but man, if he's getting 1.2, that ain't cheap. If he's getting 1.2 plus all those incentives, I got to go back and look at how that thing's worded. Like I said, I didn't really look at it earlier. But you gotta remember, man, Clemson's got to pay Riley's buyout, still paying Goodwin's buyout. They got to pay Khan's buyout, and they set that thing up so they would pay. I mean, that's the way it was set up. You know, he didn't take the job until he got fired. That way, he got the buyout minus the little bit he's going to make at Sanford. I think they're done paying Streeters. I don't know. They might not. They might still be paying Thomas Austin's. They're paying a few right now. People are never going to be happy. I'm worried we aren't being aggressive enough and casting a wide enough net in the portal. Indiana had 13 portal recruits on campus first couple of days it opened. I can't even give you an accurate count of how many Clemson's had on campus in the first 2 or 3 days. It might be around 13. I don't know. I know it's at least half of that. It's at least half of that. I mean, and like I said earlier, you're not going to hear about it every visit. I don't really follow Indiana. I don't know how their recruiting is done. I know Clemson likes to keep this portal stuff as quiet as possible. They prefer for none of it to get out. If you scroll Twitter, man, none of these guys are really advertising that they visited Clemson. Some of their agents are putting it out, and once they get there, though, you're not seeing all these pictures of the guy might kind of hide it on his Instagram story or something, but that's about all I've seen. LSU. Sam Levitt's not going to LSU. Yeah, there is no pursuit of DJ Lagway. You think QB recruits will start to take Clemson off the list with the recent history of Clemson not developing quarterbacks? I don't think you've already got your guy for 27, man, and it kind of looks like they're going to be able to hold on to him, barring Dabo leaving or something. So you're going to get another year before you have to really start worrying about that again. You can change a lot of perceptions in one season. I'm of the opinion, really, Cade's kind of the only one in my eyes because you look at DJ, that guy played under 3 different coaching staffs and still looked the same. It's not like it was the coach's fault for not developing at Clemson. He went to Oregon State, same dude. Went to Florida State, same dude, maybe even worse. So, I mean, it's not Clemson's fault he didn't develop. Maybe it's just him. But I do, and that might be very well end up being the case with Cade. It might just end up being he didn't have it between the ears. We won't know the answer to that maybe for a little while. We might have to wait and see what Garrett Riley does at his next stop or wherever he ends up. But I mean, you got another season to change those perceptions. If Dabo's the one making that decision on QB, and he is, he can't give the notion that his OC is the head coach of the offense like Tom Allen with the defense. Why not? I guarantee you Tom Allen's not getting final say on how many portal recruits he gets, and he's not. Dabo's going to get the final say on that. There's still some things that are going to be decided by the head coach, even if Tom Allen's the head coach of the defense and Chad Morris is the head coach of the offense. Yeah, that's the ringtone for everybody except my wife. Hers is the Imperial March from Star Wars. She loves it. Put a 275 viewer stream on hold to take your recruits call. That might be the number on your end from the platform you're watching on. It was a lot higher than that on this end. I don't know if you could tell, but I really didn't want to do it, but I had to. All right, I got to be wrapping this up. What is Eason do? I need to see more urgency chasing some dudes in the portal. Clemson's been after multiple defensive tackles. I mean, they're not gonna. I mean, they might only take one or two. I mean, it's not like they're gonna go after 10. Yeah, I don't think letting Vizina play a quarter, a half, 3/4, the whole game makes any difference. It's playing with an injury depleted team with several opt outs, missing his two of his best wide receivers, a bunch of the offensive line, and playing in a scheme that they're not even going to use next year, which I believe that the decision on that was already made before that game. Vizina should have been playing more throughout the year, just like the backups and runners. See, that's the scary part right there. I'm not a believer in Vizina should have been playing more, because from my understanding, what they saw in practice is the reason why he never got an opportunity and when Cade was thinking it up. So that's the scary part here. That this is known. He wasn't good enough in practice this year to even go in for Cade when he was thinking it up, but yet he's going to be good enough to start next year. That's the scary part. I'm not a believer in playing a guy just to play a guy. Yeah, I've been saying for 10 minutes, I got to wrap it up. We have low grade talent at running back, tight end, QB other than Bettencourt and Davidson. We are not top 75 talent. I know Clemson was, I don't know about this year. It hadn't come out yet, but last year, man, they were one of the top 18 teams in the country from a blue chip perspective. Yes, Indiana has cash, and they've got lots of it. Mark Cuban. Do I think Chad makes any changes with the offensive staff? No. It's not Chad's job. I've been asking, going back about 5-6 weeks now, to show me a sitting head coach that allows a newly hired coordinator to come in and fire members of the staff or fire members of a sitting staff so he can hire new assistants. I don't know that happens. Maybe a newly hired coordinator gets to bring a guy or two with him from his previous stop. Morris don't have a previous stop. He didn't coach anywhere last season. But I don't know of any head coach that just lets them come in and fire sitting staff members, because it's the head coach that's going to have to ultimately accept the responsibility for those moves. So why would you put it in the hands of somebody else? Ray Joseph, Clemson doesn't need a slot. They've got Tyler Brown, they've got Juju Preston, and now they've got Naheem Burrows. That was the problem with the wide receiver room when Grisham took it over and Jeff Scott left. It was too much of the bigger bodied, slower type guys, not enough variety, not enough of the smaller, twitchier slot type guys. Now you got the right mix of variety in that room, man. I wouldn't want to overload it with too much of one over the other. Why is Nolan the safety coach? Is it to save money for the port? No. Clemson is maxed out on what they can share what they can spend rev share wise. I mean, you could fire Dabo tomorrow and you can't take that $11 million and put it toward the salary. It's not how it works. It has to, your NIL has to come from a different pool of money. It was split. I'm assuming you're talking about Lawrence and Bryant. Yeah, it really wasn't a competition because Lawrence was just that much better, and everybody knew it. If it would have been anybody else but Kelly Bryant, Trevor Lawrence would have started the year that year as the starter. The only reason that they did it the way they did it is because Dabo wanted Lawrence to go out and win it decisively on the field, where he wouldn't risk fracturing the locker room, because Bryant had so much support in the locker room because he was the guy the year before, and he's such a nice guy and everybody likes him. So you had to go out and let it happen on the field the way it did. So I mean, yeah, it's kind of not true that it wasn't much of a competition, but there was absolutely a full-blown competition for that job that fall camp spring. But from my understanding, the results were not even close. Nobody's job title in the secondary has been announced. Nothing's official. I don't know if Wright's going to be. I was calling him Hawkins earlier, wasn't it? But I don't know if Wright's going to be the safeties coach or the nickels coach or what. The only thing I feel comfortable in saying that Mike Reed will be the corners coach. Lawrence played in each one of the first 4 games. He came in and played at Texas A&M. It was actually Kelly Bryant that brought Clemson back and won, to win that game, to be quite honest. If Bryant doesn't come back in, and I'm not sure Clemson wins that game. So, I mean, but that thing played out the way I just said. It was a wide open competition with Kelly Bryant being the incumbent, and Kelly Bryant had the support of a big, big part of the locker room. And the worry was if you just yanked him out of the starting lineup, especially before the season even started, you'd lose the locker room before the season even started. I thought you look back on how that season played out, he handled it perfectly. Perfectly. Didn't lose the locker room, didn't lose, anything. Why did Graham disband the 110 Society? Can't just do rev share. Got to be over 18 million. House was misadvertised. Was supposed to end fake NIL, but it's done nothing of the sort. You just answered your own question, because by the rules, NIL is supposed to be third party, and that's why the 110 was folded into IPTE, and the NIL stuff's now under Clemson Ventures. You can't blitz when the back end can't cover. You can't shoot. You can't run everybody out there when the back end can't cover, man. And the dog has come in here and sat on the remote, turned on the television. That is what you hear. Hey, appreciate everybody that tuned in, man. Stay tuned to the site, ClemsonInsider.com, man. We've had a ton of portal coverage over the past few days. Ton more coming. I would not be disappointed at all if we just went back to the way it was and I didn't have to recover portal recruiting. If you got any interest in wanting to be a sponsor of the show, man, I'm letting it go cheap. Just shoot me an email, a DM on Twitter, message me on Facebook, whatever. There's a reason why my last sponsor stuck with me so long, man, because I give it to you at a good price, man. Right back here next Monday, 7 p.m. Don't miss it.